With over 15,000 tools available, selecting the right MarTech can be challenging. Meet the MarTech Intelligence Report's free buyer's guides, exploring specific platforms including purchase considerations, leading players, adoption trends, and more. No matter where you are in the purchase journey, MarTech Intelligence Reports can help.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Eyes Everywhere, Performance Monitoring and Optimization with AI. I am Sarah Owens, and I am Senior Vice President of Analytics and Data Science at Ars Ex Machina, or AXM for short, and I'll be your moderator for today's discussion. And I'm really excited to be joined by our panelists. First, we have Anthony Tedesco, who is the Global Search and Programmatic Lead at Cisco Systems, Inc.
Hey, Sarah.
Hi, nice to see you. Next, we have Christina Inge, CEO of ThoughtLight.
Great to be here.
Great. And then finally, last but not least, Reza Moyandin, who is the co-founder of Cell Agency.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, thanks to all of you for being here. And just a quick reminder, if you have questions to the audience, if you have questions or comments during this session, please drop them in the chat and we'll do our best to get to them. With that, let's kick things off. We're going to start actually with a surprise question to keep things fun. So the panelists are not aware of this question yet, but in just a couple words, we're going to go around the table and we'll start with Christina. If you could have perfect data but no AI, or messy data but with AI tools, which scenario would you choose?
Oh, absolutely perfect data with no AI, because if you have AI with messy data, you're just going to be making terrible mistakes very quickly and efficiently.
Good point. Okay. Reza, what do you think?
Ooh, I'm going to be the opposite. I'm going to go for messy data with AI and discover what I'm going to get.
Oh, nice. Little roll the dice. Okay, Anthony, how about you? Tiebreaker.
I guess I'm the tiebreaker here. I think I have to lean towards Christina's POV there. I think, especially coming from a performance marketing background, that data integrity is so critical to garnering those insights. And I think I'd at least like to start the game with the data structure in a good place.
Fair enough. Okay, we're going to go to a poll actually and get the audience participating a little bit. So as this first poll launches, you'll be asked to join the audience to participate. So please enter your first name and click on the Join Audience button. And then you'll click on the polls icon in the top right corner of the video window. You'll see the poll come up on the right side of the video window. Please select an option. I'll go over that one more time. You'll be asked to join the audience to participate. Enter your first name and click on Join Audience button. You'll see the poll come up in the right side panel of the video. Oh, I skipped a step. Click on the polls icon in the top right, and then you'll see it come up. Make your selection. Okay, and we're getting some results in. Are you leveraging AI to monitor your campaigns and optimize performance? Almost 40%, 39% of you say yes, 60% say no. Well, you're going to enjoy the next half hour. Okay, and now for those of you who said yes, we have a secondary poll. You'll do it the exact same way. Just join audience to participate, enter your name, upper right corner. If you said yes, what AI are you using to monitor and optimize? So there's lots of different kinds of AI, right? We've spent all the rage and all the talk over the last few years. So We kind of broke it down into the main categories. There's large language models like ChatGPT, Gemini, etc., machine learning, agentic AI, and OpenAI just actually released like agentic kits a couple weeks ago, and then other. So make your selections. If you said yes and you're using AI to optimize and monitor and optimize, what kind are you using? Okay, we've gotten some results here. Half of the audience is saying LLMs, 35% machine learning, 14% agentic, which is impressive and great, and we didn't get any others. So there you go. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating in that. It's good to see a mix of questions. So we're going to dive into the rest of the questions now. And this question is going to go to Reza. AI can remove human delay, as we just kind of talked about. So you can do things faster. But what are the risks of over optimizing, either too often or maybe to the wrong signal?
It's heavily dependent on your data, and there is a big difference between when you're optimizing using data-led decisions or optimizing using data-informed. Now, the idea here is that if you're purely data-led, your data could be actually containing information that you don't want to, so the messy data. And if you're data informed, you're actually looking at your holistic data sets and like making a decision, having a human in the loop. And that's where it becomes quite important. And if you make the wrong decisions using purely data led, that's where things can go wrong. I don't know what else others are thinking about it.
Yeah. Christina, what do you think?
Well, I think that I want to go off on maybe a little bit of a tangent. I think that there's a lot of ways in which, yes, data can go wrong. I would say, though, that no organization has perfect data. And I think that to a large extent, and I know I'm going a little bit off onto a different topic here, but I think that we can also get paralyzed with the data equivalent of analysis paralysis, which is we wait to have perfect data. We wait to have, and again, I know I'm the person who would rather have clean data and no AI, but I think that you can take that to the extreme and you can get obsessed with, oh, our data has to be absolutely perfect or else we can't take action. And it becomes yet another reason why people don't leverage the data that they have. So there's two sides to it, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and then the risk. I think the risk inherent is just
Yeah.
bad performance, right?
The risk is bad performance, and the risk is also inaction, which is the equivalent to bad performance, because inaction often is it's choosing bad performance. In when you do it,
Mm,
when you're in when you don't take action, you're choosing not to optimize. That doesn't mean be reckless, but choosing inaction means choosing a lack of performance,
correct.
which
Yeah, you're choosing to leave money on the table.
you're choosing to leave money on the table, and you're choosing to also uh, cede market share to your competition who is taking a more proactive approach.
Right. And that's actually a really great segue into the next question, which is for you, Christina. So we're going to stay with you. What happens when everyone is optimizing in real time with AI? Is there a ceiling to performance? Are we all like our buyers all going after the same audiences and impressions? And
I think in any field there's a ceiling to performance, right? If everybody's optimizing, then that becomes table stakes. That becomes what customers expect. And then you have to find the next new competitive advantage. But going back to the prior question, that doesn't mean that that's a reason to then decide not to optimize because everybody else is going to do it and it's not going to become competitive advantage. You want to at least get to the point where you're keeping up with the table stakes. However, I think there's an alchemy, a kind of mix between optimization to the maximum extent that you can and your organization's unique value proposition where it doesn't become table stakes. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you are a niche brand of organic food products. And, I've worked with brands in the CPG space before. Let's say you appeal to a very niche audience, a blue ocean, if you will, of people who are, let's say, have allergies and are also gluten free and shop sustainably. You're optimizing for that market, which means you're digging deeper into that niche. So it's not just that we're all optimizing in that sense that we're getting better and better across the same yardstick. In fact, we are going deeper and more precise with our own audience. So that means there is still the differentiator, and that differentiator is something that precedes AI. It's knowing who your target audience is, who your focus customer is, and serving them in the best way possible. And if you're doing that, then yes, everybody's optimizing, but you're going to differentiate by who you are optimizing for. And that's going to actually continue to not only maintain your competitive advantage, but deepen your competitive advantage because you'll be more optimized for the people who need your solution the most.
Makes sense. Yeah, makes it super important to have a good audience signal.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Next, we're going to go to Anthony. If an organization has zero AI capabilities today, where should they start? So this is like, I think 50% of our 40% of our audience. I can't remember now. What's step one? Yeah, go ahead, Anthony.
It's a great question, Sarah. I think it's funny because I'm here representing Cisco, right? And though we are a Fortune 100 company, our kind of approach to AI adoption has probably been conservative, especially as it relates to optimizations, and like actual kind of material changes that we're letting any sort of like algorithms or automations take. And that's because there is a material operational risk when you're operating at our scale. And so, I love that poll, kind of seeing that there is a decent chunk of the audience here today that hasn't necessarily played around too much. So let me give you a couple tips from my perspective. I think number one is rather than kind of jumping right to the point at which the automation may be making changes on your behalf, right? Start by flag when there's something wrong or something's materially changed. And this is a, kind of topic that of, I guess operations that we've built out that really kind of all fall underneath anomaly detection, right? So there's a couple different ways you can approach that. Quantitatively, which is, hey, let's just use an example of like a campaign that you're spending against. If all of a sudden your spend spikes for some reason on a particular day, having an email shot to you based on an automated process that you built out, so that you can quickly adapt, right? You're not waiting till maybe the end of the week when you typically check your reports or what have you. But there's also like non-quantitative examples as well. Perfect example being like a URL redirect. So I think there's a couple different ways you can go about it. And I do want to give a shout out to one of my colleagues, Rowan, who, he started at this, like, approaching these, types of processes without much of a background as it relates to kind of the coding that was required. And I think you can use LLMs today and some base templates you can find online to build some really cool scripts and automations that help with anomaly detection. So I would say in general, start kind of going there before you're having the, processes themselves make physical changes as it relates to your campaign performance.
That's a great tip. Yeah, and I know a lot of our workflow tools like Slack and Copilot and like the dashboard, environment we use have those tools built in, so you can create those alerts, and it's really helpful. Thanks, Anthony. Reza, we're going to move to you now. Give an example of how you've implemented AI-driven optimization in your organization.
Well, one of the things that we do is we try to, as an organization, we try to expose brands to their customers, existing customers, or potential new customers. Now, one of the challenges we often see with large organizations who've got big data sets of customer services, they tend to have, for example, 500 or 1,000 customer service individuals in there. And then at the same time, they're just all of them creating question-based answers. So what we have been doing in the background is we analyze our customers' questions, so our clients' customers' questions, and then create landing pages that then answers those recurring questions, and by monitoring that pattern, we can actually reduce that reliance on the customer services. So this client of ours has got 700, for example, customer service individuals, and they're trying to increase the number of inquiries answered just through the web pages by analyzing the data and the telephone calls and everything else that goes on. So that reduces the load on the customer service team. So that's one of the best ways I've seen to get reduction in load.
Oh, that's very interesting. So what is it you're using LLMs to
Yes,
do that?
that's right. So the telephone calls get transcribed, and then the transcriptions get fed into LLMs that match the patterns. And then from that, we generate landing pages, and then the editors go and analyze the data sets, and we go, right, this is the answer. This has happened multiple number of times. Let's reduce that. So if 1,000 people overnight to start asking about the same question, for example, a bug has been introduced, then we can quickly answer that and then bring that forward, and then make sure what we do is mainly through SEO, make sure people find that answer. And that seems to work really, 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 really well. It was quite interesting. If a couple of years ago, when Sex and the City showed Peloton, for example, saying people are having heart attacks, a lot of people overnight started asking, is Peloton causing heart attacks? So if they were receiving loads of phone calls overnight, you should be able to detect that and then answer that question fairly quickly, so those cancellations don't happen. So that's the more of a real life example of it.
Yeah, that is very cool. And do you mind? I don't know if you can share. Is AI actually creating the web pages as well? And like
It
what
creates
tools?
the initial base sets, so it creates briefs for us, and then
Okay,
our writers go ahead and actually answer the questions, because we have to sit down with actual editors to answer correct questions, because it's otherwise it would be wrong.
got to have human in the loop. Yeah,
Yep,
great.
that's right.
Um, Anthony, Christina, you guys want to weigh in here? What are you doing in your organizations using AI to optimize?
Yeah, I'm happy to take the first stab here. So I think, content creation and localization, as Reza was talking about, is a fantastic example, right? But, honestly, tying back to the point Christina was making in her kind of initial response there, there is a time and place where the human input is required and valuable. And I think taking the time to kind of map out that process end to end and determine which point is most critical for the sake of your business and the objective you're trying to achieve, to have that human input, like, it's easier said than done. I think localization is a great example. You take a company like ours, we are marketing across the world, and we're trying to make sure we show up with a consistent message in these different markets. And what we've found is that while we can leverage automation to get the ball rolling with some of that content creation, there still is the need for that kind of human checkpoint to make sure that we're not just taking almost copy and pasting out of our LLM or what have you translation tools and straight into a published web page. So I think my advice to the audience would be, like, make sure you kind of understand when those checkpoints are most critical to how you're either going to show up as a brand, or how you're kind of making decisions based on the data that you're letting the automation do the heavy lifting on.
100%, I agree with that. Like, if you do not introduce human in the loop, there's a serious risk in automation, and it can go really, really wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And you want to make sure that the human is in the loop at multiple different touch points, right? You want to make sure that the human is in the loop from the strategy point to the data collection point. There's no step that you can completely remove humans from the equation, even if it's just to do spot checks or make sure that content is flowing correctly into the right personalizations, for instance. One of the things we've noticed, for instance, we did an automation recently for a client, and you hear so much about agentic AI being the next step. The danger with agentic is that it is engineered to take the human out of the loop. And what we did is we did a data cleaning. We needed to do a data cleaning for them, and then we deployed an automation, but it had removed completely valid contacts in this case from the automation, which meant that key stakeholders were not receiving the automation that they were supposed to receive. because we skipped the human in the loop part and we tried to do it agentically. Happy to admit to a mistake like that because it was a valuable learning. We were quickly able to course correct by putting the human back into the loop. But this whole idea that we're going to clean our data, we're going to segment our audience, and then we're going to deploy a message, and AI is going to be able to execute on that perfectly without a human double checking everything from the creative side all the way to the data and then the execution side. It does not. And I mean, the human needs to be in the loop even when you are just talking about verifying who the target audience is going to be for something manually versus just trusting your AI to segment your audiences automatically and agentically. Even that, where we're dealing with data, and AI is supposed to be at its most accurate with data. Even there, taking the human out of the loop meant that a couple of stakeholders did not get the message that we wanted for them to receive. And that can compound. If we hadn't caught it, we hadn't course corrected. If that continues to compound, you might be losing key accounts, key customers, because you're just trusting the AI to agentically do all of your segmentation versus for, especially in the early stages of a campaign, being able to put the human in the loop and decide, oh, this person needs to be receiving this message because this workflow, frankly, doesn't look right. It's not going to the right segment after all. And I think that's where I think a lot of brands are over trusting AI and they think agentic is going to fix all their problems because it's going to make decisions instead of humans. But AI is notoriously bad at making decisions about people. And trusting your AI to make decisions versus humans is where brands go wrong.
Mm, really good. Yeah, really good watch out. And that's a theme I've heard actually over the last several weeks. I've been at a couple other conferences where it's sort of the same message. It's just, yeah, proceed with caution, keep a human in the loop, double checking things. And as media practitioners, I think that's our responsibility to our clients. The next question, Christina, what is one performance signal that nobody's tracking today, but 5 years from now, we'll wonder how we lived without it?
Well, I wouldn't say nobody's tracking it, but one performance signal that I am still shocked that very few people are tracking are frankly any signals other than your vanity metrics and particularly customer lifetime value. And I know that that can often be because people have a hard time calculating it or they don't have full visibility into their funnel or their customer journey. But the extent to which we are not tracking customer lifetime value at all, and then we're not tracking customer lifetime value back to the channel or combination of channels really astonishes me. We're looking at this quarter or this campaign or this month, and we're saying this campaign had higher ROI than this one because it netted X percent more sales. But what does that look like 1 year down the line, 2 to 3 years down the line? You may have, for instance, run a campaign that centers on a value proposition that's aligned with an audience segment that's not your core audience segment. Going back to the whole point of optimizing for the right audiences where you are the irreplaceable solution, maybe you have a lot of sales because you deeply discounted or you hit some kind of cultural moment. But the customer lifetime value of those off target customers is going to be lower. So don't just look at the immediate results from a particular campaign. Look at lifetime customer value. And that's a metric where I still am surprised at how many people don't even try. But I feel that predictive models and better AI visibility into the customer journey is going to fix that. And 5 years down the line, we will be amazed that we weren't measuring it.
Hmm. What a
I,
great, what
I
a
do
great
agree with
answer.
you on that, Christina, as well. Like customer lifetime value is amazing. We actually been doing that for one of our clients, and now within 7 clicks we can predict the customer lifetime value for the next 3 years, which is incredible. So even if you don't know the customer, the patterns and the behaviors are almost predictable.
Hmm.
One of the other things I wanted to actually add to this was one of the metrics that is not being tracked on the AI land is from LLMs when they actually when you ask a question from LLMs. And at the moment, no one's really tracking how much of your web browser, that ghost browsing, that happens via LLMs. And that's one of the metrics that's actually hardly ever gets tracked at the moment. So your brand is being exposed and you're not seeing that. So that's one of the things that I think people should be starting to measure, because analytics tools cannot see that ghost browsing. And also really deep down in the server logs, that's where you can see that ghost browsing. So when you're asking LLMs questions, they go, oh, I'm going to go browse these articles. That's a metric you really should be starting to track now, so you know how LLMs and agentic tools are interacting with your content that you might not be even be aware of. On our own website, we currently see 10 times the volume of LLMs browsing our website versus actually Google clicks. That's how big it's become.
That's a really great call, Reza, because yeah, as we move from like SEO to AEO, right? Answer engine
AI search, yeah.
uh, what did you say? What's the way to do it now? You deepen your
Yeah,
website files?
deep in your server logs, you can do that. So there are metrics that you could do. If you use a tool like Cloudflare, they actually have an AI report. Bob me a message and I'll share an article around it, how to do it. Or you can look at your server logs. So every time an LLM is reaching out to your server, it's browsing it in the background, and often some of the JavaScript doesn't get loaded. So you can't see that in your basic analytics, which is measured generally by JavaScript, but you can see that on your first party analytics on your server logs, because within the server logs, you can see ChatGPT user is calling your page, and this is the content that's being loaded. So you can build a rough association of which pages are actually loading up the right information and passing it on to LLMs to see, and then
Wow,
eventually train up from.
very cool. All right, I'm going to bring that one back to my agency. Okay, Anthony. When we started getting into agentic, so decision loops. Where do automated decision loops work best, and what needs to be true for it to add real value versus just optimizing to the wrong thing faster, which is kind of what we were talking about before.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think I would frame it up kind of. There's two key parameters, but this is also another one I'd love to hear from my colleagues on here as well. I think number one is, thinking about data sets where you do have a lot of data points, right? And an algorithm or a model is going to be faster. I think a great example, I'm a performance marketer, automated bidding, right? The number of variables that a bidding algorithm is able to weigh to determine the value of that potential click to me is so much better than the Excel sheets I used to use back in 2015 when these capabilities didn't exist in the platforms, right? That was Anthony going in, pulling down data every hour and refreshing an Excel sheet. We've really come a long way with, some of these kind of like bidding type algorithms. And I think, same mindset can be like applied to other dimensions of marketing as well, right? It's not just bidding algorithms, but this idea where it's multivariate. There's, a ton of data points, and theoretically, the variance in the responses gets mitigated by having a larger data set. So I think that's one. I think the other thing I would say is, think about routine, repetitive optimization tasks where, this is kind of what I've challenged my team to do is be able to write out the steps of logic in a Word document before you start kind of building the automation around it. Because
Yes.
I think when you do that, that's how you start to kind of fence in, the potential risks that may be associated kind of with the process that you're building out. A good example, for those who might be in Google Ads is something like search query reporting, right? I think that's a place where you can build out some like very defined steps of logic and be able to build an automation that takes some of that, manual analysis off your hands and provides you with a recommendation of perhaps keywords you might want to add to a negative list or positively target. So yeah, I think it's, those kind of two big things, right? Make sure you have enough data that you're not exposing yourself to variance risk in terms of how your, decisioning might respond, but then also like make sure it's clearly defined steps of logic.
Repeatable tasks.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I have one final question for the panel, for everyone on the panel. We're going to do a quick around the table in just 30 seconds maybe, and then we're going to go to some audience questions. So, what's one AI trick or funny right after Halloween? This tongue twister, trick or tweak for it to add value versus just optimizing to the wrong thing faster. Wait, no, sorry, I'm lying to you. I'm reading the wrong question. What's one AI trick that you've seen work well that everyone could shamelessly steal?
Who do you want to start with?
We can start with you.
All right. Uh, One that we have had a ton of success with over the past like 3 to 6 months, especially. My buddy Richard Lamb, he's a genius building some of the automation behind this, but like bulk sheet building and campaign name creation, those types of things, it goes back to exactly what I was just talking about with you know like recursive logic, right? This idea of defining rules and then being able to like build automation off of that. That's a place that we have, it's made a massive impact in terms of hours, allocated to what used to be fairly manual tasks becoming more push of a button.
Interesting. Do you mean bulk uploads to like when you're trafficking, doing ad serving,
Yeah,
things like that? Yeah.
exactly. Trafficking, campaign building in Google Ads or LinkedIn or anything like that. Those are places where we've been able to, really mitigate the human time spent on those Excels, and turn that into more of a turnkey process.
Okay, that's a great one. Reza, what do you have that everyone should shamelessly steal?
Oh, utilize an agentic tool that can talk to multiple LLMs and then get the comparison output. So if you're, for example, if you're trying to verify your data sets to see whether they're okay, or if you're trying to generate an idea for the same question, use the same agentic tool, call multiple LLMs, and then see all the outputs, and then you can really see the comparison. That's the quickest way.
Oh, that's a
It's
good
like
one.
A/B testing on the speed.
I love it. Christina, how about you? What's one trick that everyone can take home today?
Focus your content creation on what your audience is searching for. Use a tool like SEMrush to identify what are the questions that people are asking right now, because for AEO, for geo, whatever you're calling AI driven search, questions and conversational searches are the number one type of content that you want to optimize for. So identify those questions and then use AI generative tools to create content centered around questions, not keywords. But first identify those questions, and then for AI driven search, think questions, not keywords, and optimize for them using the content generation tool of your choice or tools of your choice, because you also want to optimize for multi-channel search, and that means social, traditional search engines, generative engines, as well as video, particularly YouTube, and center all of your content around the questions that you surface in your SEO research.
Great, thank you. Okay, I think we're going to go to some audience questions now. We've got some coming in. So I'll read the question and then I'm gonna let whoever wants to answer it. What's the worst campaign decision you've seen made because someone relied too heavily on AI?
Ooh, ROAS, maximize ROAS on Google campaigns, and the end output is the brand is basically driving all the conversion, and the rest of the things that were meant to actually top of funnel stuff, bottom of funnel stuff are not driving. So you're just wasting your money on someone who already knows your brand, and this maximized conversion is actually destroying all your money.
Yeah, you mean if you're using Google's like sort of last touch.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's using AI to just do maximum conversion, and that's not reality of
Right.
doing it. Have someone in the loop and actually add the metrics that you need to. So get rid of certain brand terms, get rid of certain things that already have conversion in place. Don't spend money on that.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Raza, do you think that could be, part of the kind of failure there could be not defining the goals of kind of like different types of customers differently. And so you're almost feeding the machine the wrong information. And that's why it's kind of going that direction.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I've seen clients come to us and they're like, "Oh, I don't understand why we're spending so much money." And it's like, well, it's not really set up correctly. And this is not knowing your audience. Like you were saying, Christine is saying, knowing your audience and the messaging is very, very key. And by just letting AI make all those decisions and not having a human to create the strategy and making that optimal decision and being in the loop, that can go really wrong.
Absolutely. I would say personalizing on the wrong thing. Understand what your customers' buying levers are and what matters to them versus what's irrelevant to them. I found that sometimes you'll set up personalization based on what's generating the most clicks or just on the data that you have available. Optimize for what is generating the most ROI, the most conversions, or conversely, look at qualitative data to understand what matters to your customers and optimize for what matters to your customers. Sorry, I have a cold.
Oh, that's okay. They're going around. We have
Yes.
through my household. This question's for Reza. What is the tool that can help you track LLM as related to your web content engagement? I think you mentioned the tool when you're talking about
Yeah,
that.
yeah, of course. It depends whether your website is on the infrastructure of Cloudflare, so you can use Cloudflare,
Okay.
or you can use your server logs to do the analysis. I've written an article on it. You can go to salt.agency/track, and it actually then gives you all the solution, and there's multiple solutions that you can look at.
Wonderful. Okay, let's see. Other questions coming in. Um, we just got one that came in. Have you changed anything new or different in this current K-shaped economy?
Hmm. We have. We're really focusing on geo right now for our clients because it's the quickest way to build long-term value right now. It's an investment that's going to pay off. I think right now in this economy, a lot of people are trying to go after the quick wins. But just like with SEO back when search engines first came on board, if you are there is a first mover advantage. In other words, if you are not optimizing for what is going to deliver long term value, your competition is going to get into those searches. They're going to get into those answers from answer engines. It's going to be harder to unseat them. So there's an opportunity right now, especially to, for instance, update your website with two key things: structured data, schema markup, in other words, answer engines, ChatGPT, they love that, as well as making your site more accessible, because accessibility is also driving both traditional SEO and geo. And so in those cases, now is the time to invest in those things. And that's a critical thing to do in this economy, because if you're not doing it, someone's going to get there first, and they're going to have those positions that are going to be stronger for years because they got there first. I saw that happen with SEO. Computers like to give you the same answers that have gotten them good feedback in the past, especially something like ChatGPT that is very driven by user feedback. And
Right.
so whoever right now is showing up in answers that are now getting positive user feedback, they're going to show up in the next answer and the next answer. And they're going to have a first mover advantage that you're not ever going to be able to make up for years.
I totally agree with Christine on that. There was a study released by ChatGPT around what percentage of users are now asking a lot of questions. It's moved away from like content writers writing content to more people asking. And based on the data sets that we're looking at, we're expecting ChatGPT, for example, to hit mass adoption rates
Mhm.
by about May next year. So if you have got your stuff built for asking now, by that time, in about 6 months, a year time, you're ready to go and you're ahead of everyone else. Totally agree with Christina on that.
Yeah, didn't you? I think you wrote something about that, Rosa. I might have saw.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Well, a month or two ago, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Well, that's all the time we have today. I want to say thank you to the audience for joining us, and thank you so much to all of our panelists. It was a very rich and interesting conversation. For everyone in the audience, if you could take a moment to rate the session, we would be very grateful. And then please click the red button in the Dig Deeper tab to get to the next session, Consent, Compliance, and Trust in the AI Age. Thanks so much. Everyone have a great day.